Imagine running on a treadmill you can't step off. Your legs are burning, your chest is tight, sweat is pouring down your face. But no matter how hard you push forward, that's what living inside a toxic cycle feels like. Exhaustion without progress, motion without freedom. And the scariest part? Most people don't even notice they're trapped. They think this endless loop is just life. Wake up, go through the motions, repeat. They call it routine. They call it normal. But deep down, they feel it. The frustration of fighting battles that never seem to end. The emptiness of promises broken to themselves. The quiet ache of wasted potential. You've probably felt it too. That sense of déjà vu, where no matter how many times you swear things will be different, somehow they're not. You change a detail here, a routine there, but the cycle, the same disappointments, the same self-sabotage, keeps pulling you back. Like gravity, like quicksand. And if you're honest, you know the cost. It steals your energy. It steals your confidence. It steals your time. And time is the one thing you don't get back. Every day lost to the cycle is a day you could have been building something greater. But here's the truth. You don't have to keep running on that treadmill. The cycle can be broken. And when you break it, you don't just escape. You reclaim control of your life. This video is about that. Not in vague terms. Not in motivational fluff. But in real, practical rules that will show you how to. Recognize the toxic patterns that have kept you stuck. Take back responsibility so you stop waiting for change and start creating it. Replace escapes with action so comfort stops stealing your future. Set standards that break old patterns before they repeat. Protect your environment so it pushes you forward instead of pulling you back. Turn your pain into power and make every mistake fuel your growth. And ultimately, reclaim your life so you stop living in loops and start living with purpose. But let me warn you, this isn't about easy fixes. The cycle you're stuck in didn't build itself overnight, and it won't disappear in a snap. It's going to take honesty, courage, and commitment. The good news? Once you take these steps, you'll never go back. Because once you taste the freedom of living outside the cycle, you'll wonder why you tolerated it for so long. So if you've ever felt like you're moving but not progressing, busy but not fulfilled, strong enough to start, but somehow too weak to finish, this is for you. Stay with me, because by the end, you'll know exactly how to end the toxic cycle and reclaim your life, starting now. Every toxic cycle starts the same way, small, quiet, almost invisible. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't feel like a trap at first. It feels like a choice, an excuse, a moment you'll recover from. You tell yourself, it's just once. I'll do better tomorrow. But over time, those small choices stack. What was once just a bad day turns into a bad habit. And before long, the habit becomes a prison. The tragedy is that most people don't even realize they're trapped until years have passed. They think they're living freely, but they're really living in loops. Loops of procrastination. Loops of broken promises. Loops of toxic relationships. Loops of distraction. And because it feels familiar, they mistake it for normal. Think about procrastination. It starts with I'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes next month. And suddenly, years have passed and nothing has changed. The cycle is simple. Delay, guilt, pressure, more delay. Round and round it goes. Or take toxic relationships. It begins with one compromise. You excuse behavior that doesn't feel right. Then another compromise. Then another. And soon, you're stuck in a cycle of mistreatment and self-doubt, wondering how you lost yourself along the way. Even something as harmless as scrolling your phone can become a toxic cycle. You open it to escape discomfort. Minutes pass, then hours. You feel guilty. You promise to stop. And the next day, you repeat it again. The cycle is pain escape, guilt repeat. And the longer it continues, the more it eats away at your confidence. What makes toxic cycles so dangerous is how subtle they are. They don't ruin your life in one moment. They erode it piece by piece. One delayed decision, one broken promise, one ignored instinct. At first, it feels like nothing. But one day, you wake up and realize months, maybe years, have been stolen by repetition. And here's the cruelest part. Cycles are self-reinforcing. The more you repeat them, the stronger they get. And the stronger they get, the harder they are to notice, because they start to feel like your identity. You don't just procrastinate, you start to believe you are a procrastinator. You don't just stay in a toxic relationship, you start to believe you deserve it. That's how cycles kill potential, not just by wasting your time, but by reshaping who you think you are. Recognition is where everything begins. The moment you see the cycle for what it is, you weaken it. What once controlled you in silence loses its grip when you call it by name. It's like switching on a light in a dark room. You can finally see the walls that have been holding you in. Ask yourself, what patterns keep repeating in your life? Where do you feel the sense of déjà vu, the same mistake, the same regret, the same frustration playing on loop? Where are you saying next time for the 10th time? Write it down. Name it. Because once you recognize it, you can begin to dismantle it. And here's the truth most people don't want to face. You can't fix what you refuse to see. You can't heal what you keep denying. That's why recognition is the first victory. It's uncomfortable, even painful, to admit the cycle exists. But until you do, you'll keep running on that treadmill, burning energy, but going nowhere. Recognition doesn't mean blame. It doesn't mean shame. It means clarity. It means finally facing the reality of the cycle so you can stop it from stealing the rest of your life. Once you recognize the cycle, the next instinct is often to look outward, to blame the circumstances, the people around you, the lack of opportunity, the way life has been unfair. And maybe some of that is true. Maybe you didn't choose every event that pushed you here. But here's the brutal truth. If you keep pointing outward, you stay trapped. Responsibility isn't about fault, it's about freedom. You may not have created every problem in your life, but you are the only one who can choose to end it. The moment you stop waiting for someone else to fix it, the moment you stop telling yourself, I can't because of them, because of that, you take back power. Most people think responsibility is a burden. They think it's unfair, like an extra weight placed on their shoulders. But winners understand something different. Responsibility is the key that unlocks the cage. Because if you are the one responsible, then you are also the one capable of change. Think about how cycles are reinforced by blame. A person procrastinates, then blames the workload. They feel powerless, so they delay. Someone stays in a toxic relationship, blaming the partner for all the pain. But as long as the blame points outward, the story stays the same. Nothing changes. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine saying, this may not be my fault, but it is my responsibility. That single decision flips the entire dynamic. Instead of waiting for someone to rescue you, you step into the role of rescuer. Instead of waiting for conditions to improve, you improve yourself. And the cycle breaks its rhythm. Picture someone stuck in traffic, day after day, cursing the cars around them. They arrive late, angry, and exhausted. That's blame. Now picture someone else in the same traffic who chooses to leave home earlier, adjust their route, or use the time to learn something with an audiobook. Same problem, but one takes responsibility and creates options, while the other stays trapped. Responsibility also means refusing the easy excuses. Excuses feel safe in the moment, but they are expensive. They cost you growth. They cost you freedom. They cost you the chance to live as the person you could become. Excuses at the root, not because life is easy for them, but because they know excuses guarantee that the cycle will continue. Ask yourself honestly, where have you been handing away responsibility? Where have you convinced yourself that change isn't possible until something else changes first? That belief is the chain, and the day you break it, the day you reclaim full responsibility, you realize the chain was never locked. It was only in your mind. Yes, it takes courage. Blame is comfortable. Responsibility feels heavy at first, but it's the kind of weight that makes you stronger the longer you carry it. The moment you choose it, you shift from being a victim of the cycle to the architect of your life. And from there, everything begins to move differently. Because once you stop escaping responsibility, you can also stop escaping action. Cycles feed on escape. That's their fuel. Every time you feel the discomfort of responsibility, the pressure of change, or the sting of failure, the easiest response is to escape, to avoid, to soothe yourself in the moment instead of doing what actually moves you forward. And escapes come in many disguises. Some are obvious: scrolling for hours on your phone, binge-watching shows, eating when you're not hungry, numbing yourself with substances. But others are subtle: overthinking instead of acting, planning instead of starting, telling yourself you're too tired today, but tomorrow will be different. They all serve the same purpose: to temporarily ease the discomfort while keeping you trapped in the cycle. That's how the toxic loop stays alive. The pattern goes like this: discomfort, escape, relief, guilt, repeat. The relief tricks you into thinking you've solved the problem, but it's fake progress. You've only delayed it. And when the guilt comes, it drags you right back into the same place. The truth is, no escape ever fixed a problem. No amount of scrolling solved procrastination. No amount of complaining saved a relationship. No amount of hiding healed a wound. The only thing that breaks the loop is action. But here's the challenge: when you've been trained by the cycle to escape, action feels harder than it really is. You've told yourself so many times that it's impossible that you start to believe it. That's why the shift doesn't begin with massive change. It begins with the smallest possible step. Replace escape with action. Not next week. In the very moment you feel the urge to run from discomfort, act instead. You feel the pull to scroll, write one line of the report you've been avoiding. You feel the temptation to drown stress in food. Take a walk, drink water, move your body for 5 minutes. You feel like shutting down a conversation to avoid conflict? Speak one honest sentence. Tiny actions destroy toxic patterns because they interrupt the rhythm of escape. The secret isn't to never feel the urge to escape. The secret is to recognize the urge and pivot. Each time you do, you weaken the cycle. Each time you escape, you feed it. Think about the power of compounding again. One action may seem small, insignificant even, but string them together, and they become unstoppable momentum. The first time you resist escape and act, you feel proud. The second time, you build trust. The third time, you begin to realize you don't have to live in the loop anymore. And here's what most people miss: action creates energy. Escaping drains it. That's why, when you avoid the task, you end up feeling heavier. But when you face it, even if only in a small way, you feel lighter, more in control. The cycle thrives on the illusion that escape feels better, but reality is the opposite. Action is what restores power. Ask yourself, what's your most common escape? Is it overthinking, avoidance? And what's the simplest action you can take the next time the urge comes? Don't overcomplicate it. One step is enough. The point isn't perfection. The point is interruption. Because when you stop running, the cycle loses its grip. When you choose even the smallest action, you prove to yourself that change is possible. And with each action, you begin building momentum that no escape can compete with. Over time, this shift does something powerful. It rewrites your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who avoids discomfort and start seeing yourself as someone who acts discomfort. That identity will carry you further than any escape ever could. The cycle is sustained by avoidance. Break the avoidance, and you break its spine. And once you've learned to replace escape with action, the next challenge is clear. It's not just about doing something. It's about setting standards strong enough to prevent the cycle from rebuilding itself. Action is powerful, but if you don't anchor it to clear standards, the cycle eventually sneaks back in. Because a single choice in the moment can interrupt the loop, but without boundaries, old habits find their way through the cracks. That's why winners don't rely on willpower alone. They raise their standards so high that certain behaviors are no longer even an option. Think about it like a line drawn in the sand. Most people live without those lines. Everything is negotiable. They'll say, "I know I shouldn't, but just this once," and before they realize it, just this once has turned into every time. Standards remove that negotiation. Standards say, "This is who I am, and this is what I will not tolerate, period." Take health, for example. Someone without standards will say, "I'll try to eat better this week." But when stress comes, they fold. Someone with standards says, "I don't drink soda. I don't eat fast food." Notice the difference. It's not a goal. It's an identity-backed standard. One is optional. The other is non-negotiable. Or think about work. Without standards, procrastination creeps in. You tell yourself, I'll get to it eventually. With standards, you set a rule. If it takes less than 5 minutes, I do it immediately. I don't push deadlines. I deliver early. That standard eliminates hesitation because the decision is already made. The same applies to relationships. Without standards, you allow disrespect, you tolerate dishonesty, you excuse behavior that eats away at your self-worth. With standards, you decide, I only allow relationships where respect and honesty are non-negotiable. That clarity cuts toxic patterns before they take root. The truth is, cycles survive because of weak boundaries. If you don't define what you will no longer accept, the cycle will define it for you. And the cycle always chooses the path of least resistance. Here's the thing about standards. They're not about being perfect. They're about being clear. Perfection says, I'll never fail. Standards say, even if I stumble, this is the line I return to every single time. That difference is what makes them sustainable. Most people confuse goals with standards. A goal says, I want to lose 10 pounds. A standard says, I don't skip workouts. I eat clean food. A goal says, I want to be financially free. A standard says, I save before I spend. I invest before I can. Goals are something you chase. Standards are something you live. Ask yourself, what patterns have been repeating in your life because you've left the door open? Or have you told yourself, just this once, and then watched it spiral? Imagine how different things would look if you drew a line and said, no more. This is who I am now. And don't underestimate the small standards. Sometimes the smallest ones carry the biggest impact. Waking up when the alarm rings instead of snoozing. Keeping your promises, even when nobody is watching. Finishing the last rep at the gym instead of quitting early. These micro-standards compound into unshakable self-trust. There's freedom in this. At first, standards feel restrictive, like rules. But in reality, they liberate you. When the decision is already made, you don't waste energy debating with yourself. You don't wonder if today is the day you'll give in. You already know who you are and what you do. That certainty removes stress. And here's the paradox. People who live without standards think they're free, but they're really slaves to impulses and emotions. People who live with high standards seem strict, but they're actually the freest, because they've removed the chaos of constant negotiation. Standards don't just stop toxic cycles. They prevent new ones from forming. They guard the progress you've fought for. They ensure that when discomfort comes, you don't slide back patterns. The question is, what standards will you set? What lines will you draw that say, this cycle ends with me? And once those standards are clear, there's something else you'll need to protect. Because even the strongest standards can crumble if the environment around you is toxic. Even the strongest standards can collapse if you're surrounded by the wrong environment. Because here's a truth most people ignore. Your environment shapes you more than your willpower does. You might set the highest standards in your mind, but if everything around you pushes in the opposite direction, you will eventually bend. Think about it. You can set a standard of eating clean, but if your kitchen is stocked with junk food, every decision becomes a battle. You can set a standard of focus, but if your phone is within reach every second, distractions will win. You can set a standard of self-respect, but if you keep surrounding yourself with people who disrespect you, sooner or later, their voices become louder than your own. The cycle thrives in environments that feed it. Toxic patterns rarely survive in isolation. They need triggers, cues, reminders. If the triggers remain, the cycle stays alive, no matter how strong your intentions are. That's why protecting your environment isn't optional. It's non-negotiable. Winners know this. They don't just set standards. They engineer their surroundings to support those standards. They remove friction from good behaviors and add friction to toxic ones. They don't rely on sheer willpower. They build an environment where their best decisions become the easiest decisions. Look at how this plays out in everyday life. Someone who wants to break the cycle of endless scrolling deletes social media apps from their phone. They make it harder to slip back into the pattern. Someone who wants to eat clean clears their fridge of processed food and stocks it with whole, nutritious options. When the craving hits, the choice is the healthy one. Someone who wants to protect focus creates a workspace with no distractions, turning their phone on airplane mode during work hours. It's not just about objects, though. It's about people. If you surround yourself with people who normalize excuses, you will start to excuse yourself. If you spend time with people who feed negativity, you will start to see life through their lens. But if you place yourself in environments where growth, discipline, and respect are the standard, you rise to meet it. Humans are wired to adapt to their surroundings. You can fight it, or you can use it. Protecting your environment also means knowing what drains you. Toxic cycles often thrive in chaos, cluttered spaces, unpredictable routines, constant noise. Winners simplify. They remove clutter not just physically, but mentally. They know that every bit of energy spent fighting a messy environment is energy stolen from growth. And let's be honest, sometimes protecting your environment requires making hard cuts. It might mean limiting time with people who pull you backward. It means stepping away from places that tempt you into old patterns. It might even mean leaving behind versions of yourself that no longer fit who you want to be. That's not cruelty. That's survival. Ask yourself, what in your environment is feeding your cycle? What triggers, what people, what habits are silently pulling you back every time you try to rise? And just as important, what could you change today that would make the right choices easier and the wrong ones harder? Because here's the truth, the environment always wins. If you don't shape it intentionally, it will shape you by default. And if your default environment is toxic, the cycle will never end. But when you protect your environment, something powerful happens. You stop wasting energy fighting battles you've already won. You free yourself to focus on building, creating, moving forward. You give yourself space to breathe, space to grow, space to become. And it's in that space that another transformation becomes possible. Because once you've cleared the noise, removed the toxins, and built a safe place for growth, you can finally do something most people never even attempt. Take the pain of the past and turn it into power for the future. Every toxic cycle leaves a trail of pain. The pain of wasted time. The pain of broken promises. The pain of staying small when you knew you were made for more. And most people try to numb it, bury it, or run from it. They see pain as something to avoid at all costs. But winners know better. They understand that pain can be one of the most powerful sources of transformation if you know how to use it. Think about how pain usually works in cycles. You procrastinate, then feel guilt. That guilt becomes pain, so you distract yourself to escape it. The distraction gives temporary relief, but the work piles higher. More guilt, more pain. The cycle deepens. Pain, when avoided, becomes a weapon against you. But flip it, and everything changes. Instead of letting pain crush you, you let it teach you. Instead of running, you confront it. Instead of asking, why me? You ask, what is this showing me? Suddenly, pain is no longer an enemy. It becomes fuel. History is full of examples. Some of the strongest leaders, creators, and innovators didn't rise in spite of their pain. They rose because of it. They used heartbreak to fuel empathy. They used loss to fuel purpose. They used failure to fuel resilience. The pain that could have destroyed them became the very thing that made them unstoppable. You don't have to look far to see this in your own life. Think about a time when you hit rock bottom. Maybe it was losing something or someone you thought you couldn't live without. Maybe it was looking in the mirror and realizing you'd broken too many promises to yourself. Maybe it was waking up one day and realizing years had passed and you were still stuck in the same place. Pain stings because it points to truth, and truth, faced directly, is powerful enough to set you free. The mistake is trying to erase it, pretending it doesn't matter. But ignoring pain never works. It always leaks out. In anger, in regret, in bitterness. The only way to break the cycle is to face it, accept it, and then choose to redirect it. Ask yourself, what pain in your life are you still carrying? What myths keep whispering to you, reminding you of the cycle you haven't yet broken? Instead of burying that pain, what if you turned it into a vow? A vow that says, never again. I will not repeat this story. This pain will not be wasted. It will become my reason for change. When you do this, pain transforms. It stops being a chain and becomes a compass. It stops being something that drags you backward and becomes something that pulls you forward. Every time you feel it, it reminds you of who you refuse to be and pushes you closer to who you are becoming. And the beauty is, once you've turned your own pain into power, you gain the ability to help others do the same. Your scars become a map for someone else who's lost. Your story becomes proof that the cycle can be broken. Your pain becomes not only your power, but your gift. This is why winners never waste their pain. They don't run from it. They don't numb it. They use it. And in using it, they rise stronger than those who never dared to face it. The cycle feeds on avoidance. But the moment you take even the deepest pain and decide it will fuel you instead of break you, the cycle starves. It loses its grip because there is no longer anything it can hold against you. So ask yourself right now, will you keep carrying pain as a burden, or will you turn it into the fire that propels you out of the toxic cycle once and for all? Because once you make that choice, something shifts. You stop being defined by what hurt you. You start being defined by how you use it. And that shift leads to the final breakthrough. The moment where you stop just breaking cycles and finally reclaim your life. Breaking the cycle isn't just about stopping what's toxic. It's about reclaiming what's been lost. Because cycles don't just waste your time. They steal your energy, your clarity, your confidence, and slowly, your identity. When you end the cycle, you don't just walk away from old habits. You walk back into the life you were meant to live. Reclaiming your life begins with ownership. For years, maybe you've been living on autopilot, reacting to circumstances instead of directing them. You've been repeating patterns without even realizing it. But now, the story changes. You've seen the cycle. You've taken responsibility. You've replaced escape with action. You've set your standards. You've protected your environment. And you've turned pain into power. Each of those steps isn't just about survival. It's about restoration. Think about the opportunities you missed because procrastination kept you frozen. The relationships that drained you instead of fueling you. The nights wasted escaping into distractions instead of building your future. The belief you lost in yourself because of too many broken promises. Reclaiming your life means taking those things back, not in the sense of changing the past, but in the sense of refusing to let the past dictate your future. When you reclaim your life, you redefine who you are. You stop saying, "This is just the way I am," and start saying, "This is who I choose to be." That choice is the ultimate freedom. Because cycles make you feel like you're powerless, like everything is predetermined. But reclaiming your life is proof that nothing is set in stone. At any moment, you can decide to rise. And here's the most powerful part. Reclaiming your life doesn't mean becoming someone new. It means returning to the person you were always capable of being. The cycles, beneath the distractions, beneath the pain, there's always been a version of you that is disciplined, resilient, focused, and alive with this. The cycle buried it, but now you're digging it back out. Reclaiming your life also means embracing progress instead of perfection. The cycle feeds on all or nothing thinking. If you stumble once, it tells you to give up. But reclaiming your life means refusing that lie. It means saying, "Even if I stumble, I rise again." That mindset turns every misstep into momentum. Ask yourself, what does reclaiming your life look like for you? Is it finally pursuing the dream you've put off? Is it restoring your health? Is it building relationships that honor your value? Is it waking up every day with clarity, chaos? Whatever it is, it's not out of reach. It begins the moment you decide to no longer live in loops. And remember, this isn't about waiting for the moment. There is no perfect moment. The cycle will always whisper, "Tomorrow." Reclaiming your life is about saying, "Now." Because the truth is, every day you wait is another day the cycle steals from you. When you finally take your life back, something incredible happens. You stop surviving and start living. You stop feeling like a passenger and start driving. You stop letting the past define you and start writing your own future. That's what freedom feels like. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of choice. Reclaiming your life doesn't mean the cycle will never tempt you again. It means you've built the awareness, the standards, the environment, and the resilience to never let it control you again. You're no longer running on the treadmill. You've stepped off, and now every step you take actually moves you forward. So here's the question. Will you keep letting this cycle run your life, or will you reclaim it now? Because the power is already in your hands. The cycle doesn't end because it disappears. It ends because you decide it does. And when you make that decision, you don't just end the toxic cycle. You open the door to everything you were always meant to become. You've just seen how the toxic cycle ends, and how your life begins again the moment you decide to reclaim it. But this is only the start. Because breaking free isn't just about escaping what holds you back. It's about building something greater in its place. So if this spoke to you, don't stop here. Keep moving forward. Keep feeding the version of yourself that refuses to go back. Because the truth is, your story isn't finished, and the next chapter is waiting.